So as you might be able to tell from the title, this is a tea talk. It is the first tea talk, and tea talk is essentially where I drink tea and I talk about things related to books. In my TARDIS. This is my TARDIS mug. As you may also be able to tell from the title, this is a video about film adaptations of books. Book to film adaptations, blah 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 blah. Now the first order of business is to talk about book before film, and I know a lot of people are huge advocates on book before film, and I generally am too. But sometimes, because of the fact that every single film these days is essentially an adaptation of a book, I don't always realize that it is. I went to see, like, when I first saw The Descendants, I didn't realize it was an adaptation. And when I first saw the Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, I didn't realize it was an adaptation. Sometimes I just don't know, and also sometimes I don't have time to read the book before I go see the film, and I don't want to miss a film because I haven't read the book. So I'm not really strict about it. I generally do like doing it that way, but I don't think I'm really good at separating the two. That's one big thing about me, is I'm great at separating. I'm not constantly comparing the two. That's no fun. I love film, I love books pretty equally, so I don't feel the need to compare the two constantly. I think they both work in their own way. You can't make a book directly into a film. There's always something not cinematic about the story or the characters that you have to alter in order to put it on a big screen. That's just how life is. That being said, I would probably never see a fantasy film before I read the book. I don't know why. I just don't think I would. There's something about fantasy that I feel like you want to create that in your head before you see the film. So that's my big exception with my stance on book to film. Now, when it comes to how I feel about books adapted into films, I am very strongly feel that as long as you have the spirit of the book, it doesn't matter how correct or incorrect the actual adaptation is, how correct the plot is. I don't want to see a bulleted list. This is how I felt about Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. It was a bulleted list of some of the events that happened in the book. It was not the book. It didn't have that spirit. You didn't feel the same way you felt when you read that book. It didn't feel authentic. You have to feel like it's giving a tribute to the book, not it's just taking a list from the book. It just felt weird watching Goblet of Fire. And I feel that sometimes about other films, but that's one of the things. A lot of people really hated The Lovely Bones, but I felt that The Lovely Bones was a fantastic adaptation because it may not have had the exact same events in the book, but it had that emotion. You could feel this. I felt the same way when I watched that film as I read the book. And also, it didn't help, or it helped very much, rather, that Stanley Tucci and Saoirse Ronan are two of my favorite actors, and they were so brilliant. But anyway, that aside, also Peter Jackson is my favorite director. So, I mean, it had a lot going for it for me, but I still feel it had the spirit of the book. I mean, there are always bits when I read a book where I'm like, I have to see that on film. I'm so excited, and then I don't, and it's upsetting. But I still think that even without your favorite bits, a film adaptation can still be good. Now I just want to briefly say some of my favorites. Atonement is probably my favorite film of all time. That was a fantastic adaptation. It took out the bits that when you're reading it felt necessary, but you didn't need them in the film. I actually might prefer, I love the writing, but I think I might prefer the film, but as I said, it's my favorite film, so I'm biased, incredibly biased. The Lord of the Rings films, oh, so perfect. Such a perfect series of films for such a perfect series of books. I just love them so much. They're my favorite films. Also with Atonement. Bridge to Terabithia was a really great adaptation. It was kind of, you know, silly, little, very fantasy, very kiddie, very not a huge budget, but it was still a wonderful film. The first two Harry Potter films I felt were spot on. You felt the magic, you felt how Harry felt when he first walked into Hogwarts. Brilliant, perfect. I'm not a huge fan of the later films, but the first two were perfect. And the final one is Never Let Me Go. When you're reading Never Let Me Go, you don't like the main character. Well, it's not that you don't like, you can't relate to her. She's so bland and so not fully there, and it's really hard to kind of relate, but when you're watching the film, you feel so much more emotion because you're not being taken through the story by Kathy, you're just kind of watching Kathy, and I think that's a huge difference that works really well in a film, though for a lot of people it didn't work well in a book. But I love both. Maybe I love the film more because of the cast, because they're my three favorite actors, probably. That is Keira Knightley, Carey Mulligan, and Andrew Garfield. Please see that film if you like wonderful things. So, yeah. So that's generally how I feel about film adaptations. This is kind of a quick video. I didn't say everything I wanted to say, but if you have feelings on it, put them in the comments. I thought this was nice. And I'm sorry I didn't drink more tea, and my tea's probably cold now, but this has been a good tea talk. I'm gonna go eat food now. And also my camera's dying. See you guys next time.